Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Our top stories. We take a look at the federal funding cuts to Harvard amid the intensifying clash over campus politics and governance at leading U.S. universities. Brazil's president keeps strengthening ties with the Chinese Communist Party. Arian Pazdar explores how this could affect the U.S. and countries across the globe. A Mexican Navy ship crashed into the landmark Brooklyn Bridge in New York City on Saturday night. 2 sailors died. The collision now under investigation. Is there really hope for reversing autism? A pediatrician highlights the promising results of a recent study that applied a broad detox approach to 2 twin children with autism. New CDC data shows the number of overdose deaths is the lowest in 5 years. But while fentanyl-related deaths have gone down, meth and cocaine-related deaths have risen. A former DEA special agent weighs in.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Ever since the Ukraine-Russia war began, world leaders have called for peace, each side coming together for direct peace negotiations on Friday. Next, we check in live with NTD's David Lamb for more. David, good to see you this Sunday morning. What can you tell us about the peace negotiations?
Yeah, hi, Chris. So this is the first direct peace talk between Russia and Ukraine ever since the 2022 invasion. And it's been long awaited. So the thing is, both presidents did not come to the meeting, but they did send their delegates. And the highlight of the meeting is that both sides have agreed to a large prisoner swap of 1,000 prisoners each. Now, this meeting took place in Istanbul, Turkey. And as far as ending the fighting, both sides seem to have to be distant here and remain far apart. Ukraine wants to have a temporary ceasefire, saying that while guns are shooting and fighting, it'll be hard to have a peace talk, whereas the Kremlin did not want a truce. Now, Vladimir Zelensky did not attend, as mentioned, but he did say this from Albania.
If the Russian representatives in Istanbul today cannot even agree to that, to ceasefire, to this clearly necessary first step, then it will be 100% clear that Putin continues to undermine diplomacy.
Now, with that said, a Russian official said that he was satisfied with the outcome and hopes to continue and be ready to continue contact. Chris?
Now, according to U.S. officials, Russia-Ukraine peace is basically contingent upon Trump and Putin meeting. What is next here, David?
Yeah, so after the meeting, President Trump said that he will make a call to speak with President Vladimir Putin on Monday, as well as talk with the Ukrainian president after, and as well as NATO allies. And this is in an effort to broker a ceasefire in the Ukraine war. Now, both sides are under pressure from Trump to end this war. This is what Trump said.
We have to meet. He and I will meet. I think we'll solve it, or maybe not, but at least we'll know. And if we don't solve it, it'll be very interesting.
So a lot going on, especially tomorrow. Like I said, this is something that the world wants to see, a lot of war and bloodshed. Now, both sides during the meeting, they seem to agree that they want to provide more details for the ceasefire proposal going forward. Chris?
David Lamb, thank you for that report. A lot to watch here. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. And now for your news roundup of the week. It was all about foreign policy the past 7 days, from a key trade deal to a major Middle East trip. On Monday, the United States and China agreed to significantly reduce tariffs on each other's goods for a temporary 90-day period, a move that has eased tensions in the ongoing trade war and lifted global markets. The United States and China agreed to drop tariffs by a massive 115 percentage points as the conclusion of the 2 days of talks in Switzerland. Currently, U.S. tariffs on China stand at 30%, and China's tariffs on the U.S. are at 10%. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. does not want to completely decouple from China.
We do not want a generalized decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. What we want is the U.S. is going to decouple in strategic industries, which we saw during COVID.
And on Friday, President Trump completed his first major foreign trip of his second term with a tour of the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. The visit resulted in major investment deals and the forging of a new diplomatic bond with Syria. During the first stop of his trip in Saudi Arabia, President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince signed a series of economic agreements. The kingdom agreed to invest $600 billion in a number of deals with the U.S. While in Saudi Arabia, the president said he'd lift all sanctions against Syria, saying it's time for the country to move forward with a chance at greatness. During President Trump's second stop, a series of agreements were also made with Qatar. The agreements include an agreement to buy more Boeing aircraft, also letters of intent to buy U.S. drone aircraft, and joint cooperation between Qatar and the U.S. During the president's final stop in the United Arab Emirates, a deal was struck for the Gulf country to build the largest artificial intelligence campus outside the United States. The project will grant the UAE expanded access to advanced AI chips. Next, as Harvard and the Trump administration continue their funding feud, we examine what is at stake. The administration says the university is politically biased. They want Harvard to fundamentally change its hiring practices, admissions processes, student and faculty bodies, and more. Over $2.2 billion in federal funding is set to be terminated, and the esteemed university's tax-exempt status is on the chopping block as well. Harvard is suing the Trump administration to halt the funding freeze. What are the implications of this fight at the highest levels of academia? Here to discuss is Manhattan Institute fellow Colin Wright and professor emeritus at Golden Gate University School of Law and UC San Francisco Law, Timothy Allen Simon. Gentlemen, welcome. Now, Education Secretary Linda McMahon says this clash is about civil rights. Harvard says it's about free speech. Who is right here, Colin? And is there a more nuanced view?
I do side with the Trump administration, the policies they're taking here, because I think this problem with racist admissions and hiring, it's plagued not only just Harvard, but essentially all higher education for really decades, and especially in 2020 when we had this moral panic over racism and extreme DEI policies that specifically try to change the racial composition in favor of minorities over white people. They were adopted essentially everywhere where we have racially discriminatory policies now. But nobody pushed back at the time out of fear of being called racist. So I really do think that there's a tremendous amount of evidence here that's totally unambiguous, that starts from the Supreme Court, Students for Fair Admission. We have different SAT cutoffs that have been exposed for the admissions of Asians versus Black students, internal documents about inclusive hiring practices that explicitly lay out that they want to hire more minorities and women over white men. I think we have the intent, we have the documents, we have the internal guidelines, we have whistleblowers, we have everything we need to know that they're violating these laws. And I think that we just need to really tighten the screws on them to get them to stop violating the Civil Rights Act.
Timothy, what's your view? Who is right here?
Well, I think to tie academic freedom and the funding of necessary federal research to the political beliefs of faculty and administration is a slippery slope. Yes, there was a racial awakening in 2020 after the tragic, literally televised murder of George Floyd, amongst other incidents that many would see as excessive force. And yes, universities, and I do sit on a college trustee board, they typically do try to achieve a balance in their admissions in order to embrace and reflect the rich mosaic of what is America. I think to tie that to funding, in essence, attacks free speech and academic freedom. And I think there should be a real concern, particularly amongst conservatives, of the government, and particularly the executive branch of government's ability to stifle and put a chilling effect in our universities. Yes, I would be the first to say that DE&I was probably co-opted, as were the civil rights amendments to the Constitution, which were largely focused on the formerly enslaved. Yes, that has expanded dramatically, and I'm not going to say it's a perfect system, but I'm not in favor of the alternative, and that's going back to a segregated country where certain communities, either because of their race, religion, or national origin, are blocked from academia in favor of a historic status quo. That is not the America that the framers intended.
Colin, what's your response? Is that what you're seeing as well?
No, I just fundamentally see it a different way. I don't think that any of the faculty are being discriminated against for their free speech. They can personally advocate for DEI and they think that we should be discriminatory in hiring, but it's just a fact that there are laws on the books, there are federal laws in the Civil Rights Act that prohibit hiring, promoting based on an individual's race. So this isn't really just about individual faculty beliefs and free speech. They're able to express their views on this, even if I think they're racist policies. But it's incumbent on Harvard to not violate these policies. I just don't think that going back to a system where we have hiring based on merit over just immutable characteristics like your skin color really have any place to do in hiring. We're not going back. We're not going back before the Civil Rights Act. Nobody wants to have Jim Crow. Nobody wants to discriminate against blacks in hiring. All we're saying is we want to have equal hiring opportunities based on individual merit, where race isn't even considered or sex isn't even considered at all. I think that's sort of what Martin Luther King wanted. I think that's what most Americans wanted. That's the ethos of America.
All right, let's move on. The Trump administration recently canceled an additional $450 million in research grants. That's on top of $2.2 billion in cuts. Timothy, how big of an impact will this have on research there?
According to President Garber, it's going to have an enormous impact, but Harvard has the type of endowment, I think approximately 52 or 58 billion, where they're probably in a position, at least in the short run, to survive this while it goes through litigation. And that's what my esteemed colleague is missing, that we are a nation of laws, not men. And if someone's equal protection and or due process rights has been violated by an institution and an academic institution, there is an action at law. There's an action within our court system. Those are the checks and balances that the framers created. What we're experiencing here, and whether you're a Democrat or Republican, there should be a concern when the executive branch determines what is legal and what is not. The executive branch has its rights to express its views, but where those views are determined to be constitutional or not are within our court system. And as long as, and we do have the Harvard and University of North Carolina case to establish that, prior to that, we had the University of Michigan special admissions case. The court has made it clear that race-based admissions, that quotas are in fact unconstitutional. That is already determined. We're talking about a different process here where the executive branch will say that what Congress has allocated and what the agencies have allocated through Congress's Article 2 powers can now be blocked by the executive branch because of what is being viewed politically. That is my concern, and I don't care if it's coming from the left or the right. That is going to have a chilling effect on our universities.
To Timothy's point here, Colin, is the Trump administration going too far? Are these requests, these demands overbroad? Are these funding halts, the threat of removing tax-exempt status, is that too harsh?
No, I don't think they're too harsh. And, we do have these court cases that have shown explicitly they're discriminating in their hiring practices. And now we have to say, well, what can the consequences be once the courts have determined that this is happening? And I think there's precedent for what Donald Trump is doing and holding them accountable. And I think that we need to also look at what I think is if we just flip the script a little bit, do a little thought experiment about what would happen, what the Democrats would be doing if we just sort of reverse the races in some of these situations, I think it really exposes a double standard. Like, what would Democrats do if the disparities in admissions and faculties were disfavoring Black people at an individual level in favor of whites? What if they even lost a Supreme Court case finding that they discriminated against Blacks? Imagine if there were internal documents about guides for decreasing the number of Black scholars and administrators, or that statistics were demonstrating that they were just clearly discriminating against Black students in hiring faculty. Can you just imagine a world where Democrats wouldn't be just going out of their way to revoke funding for Harvard in these situations, or any institution that would be discriminating against Blacks? I just think it'd be insane to think that they wouldn't be all over this and trying to do the exact same thing Trump does. And for me, just flipping the races, I think that what's right what Trump is doing, because it would be done in the opposite direction.
Timothy, I see you want to say something. Go ahead.
I'm not defending Democrats or Republicans here. I'm not a Democrat. I've been a lifelong Republican. I'm now registered as a declined estate. And everything that Colin is bringing up, this hypothetical, has already been established by the courts. Affirmative action has been determined to be unconstitutional. Race-based admissions have already been determined to be constitutional. So the question becomes, are we going to follow the rule of law, or are we going to feed into cultural wars? And we cannot allow the cultural wars to dictate tax-exempt status, to dictate federal funding. Yes, Congress has expressed its concern that certain conservative groups were being unfairly treated by the Internal Revenue Service. And I support that idea that should be always examined. But when the executive branch can say, well, this is legal, this is not, and basically not based upon any evidentiary or factual findings, then again, that is a slippery slope. If any group should be concerned about excessive power and overreach of the executive branch, it should be conservative Republicans. They expressed it under Barack Obama. It was clear. And I think in every administration in this nation's history, that tug of war between the executive branch, Congress, and the courts is what makes America great. However, you cannot have it a one-lane system where only the executive branch is allowed to weigh in or provide opinions on issues surrounding speech. Then the net simply has to remain wide so it is reflective of our constitutional system. I think,
Colin, is the Trump administration trampling on the Constitution here? I mean, is this part of the constitutional crisis we hear so much about?
I don't see this as going against the Constitution whatsoever. I mean, I think we've had the Supreme Court cases that have bared out the fact that we no longer have affirmative action. We can't be discriminating. Harvard versus Students for Fair Admissions. We had these cases. To me, this is now just about enforcement, because what happens now is you have these laws and they've been determined to have been violating them, but now they are still just maintaining these discriminatory practices, which we have mountains of evidence to suggest that just recently, including internal documents. I already went over all of these things. So at what point do you say, like, okay, we have all these laws passed, they've lost the court cases that have shown that they're violating these laws. We need to do something. If they're not going to do it by themselves, there needs to be some outside force that does this. And I think triggering the laws that decrease tax-exempt status for these organizations, or at least withhold federal funds, that's really important. And I think what we should be doing is asking Harvard, when they're getting these grants blocked, is why do you care so much about maintaining these racist policies? You care about them more than all of these important grants that you've been getting. All they have to do is stop their racist policies and the pain will go away. That's all they have to do. This isn't a difficult thing for them to do. The bar is so low.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of important issues coming to a head here. Manhattan Institute fellow Colin Wright and Professor Emeritus at Golden Gate University School of Law, Timothy Allen Simon, thank you both so much for joining us today. A Mexican Navy sailing ship on a global goodwill tour struck the Brooklyn Bridge in New York on Saturday, snapping its 3 masts, killing 2 crew members, and leaving some sailors dangling from harnesses high in the air. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
2 dead and 19 injured last night as a Mexican Navy training vessel ran into the Brooklyn Bridge. Reports say the boat lost power as it sailed in reverse into the bridge. Only people on the boat were injured. All commuters crossing the bridge were unharmed. As you can see behind me is where the boat ran into the bridge and dragged underneath towards people on the other side, looking a little worried as the boat might run into them.
Holy crap.
Eyewitnesses were reporting seeing people dangling from the safety harnesses.
We were just getting dinner. We went into Timeout Market. We were coming out. We do this quite a bit. We just sit out here and watch the sunrise, sunset.
And the boat kind of just like was going past the bridge, and you just saw the top of it snap off, and it just like kept on snapping. And I think there was a person dangling from the top.
The boat named Katemak was carrying 277 passengers in total. Some early reports say that the vessel may have lost power as witnesses noticed the boat moving in reverse as it collided into the bridge.
The coordination was extremely important, and it was executed to the best of our ability to minimize any loss of life. Our hearts go out to the family members, and many family members are going to be traveling here from Mexico. We want to make sure we collaborate with the ambassador and his team to give them the proper information at the hospital.
The Brooklyn Bridge has since been reopened, officials said after it was briefly closed, as emergency officials responded to the incident pretty quickly. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Coming up, Brazilian President Lula da Silva visits China to meet with the regime's leader Xi Jinping. Ariane Pasdar has how their ties could affect the U.S. and countries across the globe. Plus, new CDC data shows the number of overdose deaths is the lowest in 5 years. But while fentanyl related deaths have gone down, meth and cocaine-related deaths have risen. A former DEA special agent weighs in. More in just a moment, right here on NTD News.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Hey, have you heard what's happening at Mathis Home? The Monumental Savings Event is happening right now. Save big on our newest arrivals. We have hundreds of sofas with styles you love at unbeatable prices. Like this one. At just $5.99, you can enjoy this contemporary sofa by Ashley, complete with 5 accent pillows. Just one of over 100 great sofas in stock and ready for you to enjoy tonight with fast and free delivery. So don't miss out on the monumental savings event happening at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Welcome back. Brazilian President Lula da Silva keeps strengthening ties with the Chinese Communist Party. The left-leaning president visited China this week, meeting with regime leader Xi Jinping. Let's now bring in NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar, who's in Brazil. Arian, good to see you. Tell us more about this visit and how it could impact the U.S.
Hey Chris, good to see you too, as always. So about this visit, I think it can affect not only the US, but the entire world, to be honest. That's because, two reasons. First of all, both China and Brazil have huge economies, right? China produces a lot of industrial goods, while Brazil has a lot of natural resources. So everything they do naturally affects the global economy. But their ties especially affect the United States. And that's because the BRICS coalition keeps talking about replacing the US dollar as the global reserve currency. The BRICS coalition, as we know, is made up of huge economies like China, like Russia, like Brazil. Just this week, during President Lula's visit to China, he again talked about replacing the US dollar. Let's take a look at that.
What we really want is to find a way to find either a currency or a basket of currencies that can allow us to do business without depending on a single currency. We want to negotiate with the United States, but if there is no agreement, we will have to put reciprocity into practice.
Now, Chris, one thing that's very important to note here is that the country where the global reserve currency comes from obviously holds a certain power. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have this power be with the United States than with China or Russia. That's exactly why Brazil, strengthening ties with China and still talking about replacing the US dollar, is such a major issue for the entire globe, quite frankly. Chris?
Right, Arian. And what about Brazil itself? Do you think they can at least profit from a partnership with China?
Honestly, Chris, I don't think so, no, because what China does all over the globe is something many people call modern colonization. So they go to developing countries, like Brazil, for example, and then they're like, hey, we're gonna help you build infrastructure, like shipping ports at strategic locations. But then what happens? Either the interest rates are super high or the ports are simply not profitable. And those countries can't pay China back. What does China do? They step in, they take over that port, which happens to be at a strategic location, and they basically colonize that piece of land. Just a few years ago, China invested almost $1 billion in a port which is less than 1 hour away from where I am right now. They do it all over Latin America. They also do this in Africa. It's actually way worse in Africa. But let's stay with Latin America for now, just because of how close Latin America is to the US. So one megaport China is building in Peru has the capability to hold military vessels. And I don't think the US, or anybody in the Western Hemisphere for that matter, wants to have Chinese military vessels at their doorstep, right? Chris?
All right, Arian, a lot to watch out for. Thank you so much for that report. New provisional data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows a significant drop in overdose deaths. The numbers are now at the lowest they've been in 5 years. For Insight, NTD's Fiona G. spoke with Stacy Zinn, a retired special agent with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, and Montana's former DEA resident, agent in charge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this provisional data, right, from the CDC. It shows a 27% drop from last year in these drug overdose deaths in 2024. And within that, these deaths that specifically involve synthetic opioids like fentanyl, they also dropped by 37%. So as someone with extensive experience in drug enforcement, what do these numbers tell you?
Well, the numbers tell me that we're starting to educate the community and the public about the dangers of fentanyl, of the harsh, the chemical reaction that can cause the for one to overdose and die from these pills. The cliche one pill can kill campaign has been very successful. The other thing is that we as law enforcement, or me as a former law enforcement, have been adding pressure to the Sinaloa cartel, the CJNG, about we are coming after you. So you need to be aware and you need to stop pushing these drugs across the southwest border and into our communities.
But we also saw that cocaine-related deaths jumped by about 8,000 and the same number around for meth-related deaths. What do you think contributed to that rise?
Well, what's going to happen, the cartels are there to make money. So you're going to take away one product, they're going to shove other product into our country via our ports of entry, maybe through Canada, maybe through different regions. So it only makes sense. Remember, cartels are there to make money. They're not going to lose money unless we completely shut down the cartels. So this is to be expected.
So Stacey, are you saying that unless we shut down these cartels, it's just going to be like a constant game of whack-a-mole here?
Oh, absolutely. But we also need to continue educating our kids, the next generation, about the dangers of drugs. If we didn't have the demand here in the United States, then the cartels wouldn't be shoving a product at us.
Absolutely. So would you say that these shrinking numbers of overdose deaths is a trend that you're going to expect to continue to see in the coming years?
Yes, ma'am. Until we stop, we need to break down that demand. But we also need to, for lack of better words, hammer these cartels, because they're the ones that are also pushing these drugs into our country. But we also have nefarious groups out there in different regions that are also contributing to the success of the cartels pushing their drugs into our country.
All right, so let's talk about the DOJ charging these suspected high-ranking members of the Sinaloa cartel with narco-terrorism. Our Attorney General Pam Bondi, she's saying that they're going to try and get life in prison for these suspects. Tell us more about your experience. How difficult is it to catch and then indict these individuals and then make sure that they actually stay in jail if convicted?
Well, it's very hard because a lot of these cartel heads, even the first tier, the second tier, they are buffered. They are protected by their underlings. In order investigation to be successful in the United States, you really have to peel back the onion and find out who is doing what. These individuals, they have alias names. They are protected with the different technology they use to communicate with one another. It's hard to determine who's actually the puppet master, who is in control of this certain corridor and stuff like that. So law enforcement has a uphill battle of linking it to these high level traffickers. But once they do, then you're taking off the head of the snake. Now, the other problem is trying to get them extradited into the United States. If these individuals are buffered in Mexico, then you're dealing with also the Mexican government. There's a whole layer of investigation that takes place in order to get those individuals sent to us.
So if the DOJ is successful in this case with these individuals, what kind of a precedent could these cases set for the war on drugs?
It is going to put the cartel heads, they're going to take a step back and go, wow, America's serious now. They mean business. So they will pause. They will see how successful we are. They'll look at our judicial system. They will receive the reports, the investigative reports, to determine where did they make a mistake, and they will make changes. But again, we have to have a strong leader in our White House, which we do, that is willing to do whatever it takes to combat the cartels, combat these individuals that are linked to narco-terrorists, do what it takes to get rid of these elements that are causing harm to our communities.
So are you seeing any areas where the Trump administration could be even tougher on drugs or offer even more support to DEA agents?
We need more bodies in different rural areas. For example, in the larger states where you have less law enforcement present, we need more resources, more support. We need more support in the Native American community in those regions, because the cartels are preying on the Native American communities. There needs to be additional support there. There needs to be better resources to be able to coordinate with the local law enforcement, give them incentive to work with the feds in order to do these investigations, because these type of investigations are long term. And local law enforcement does not have the resources to do that, and that's where the feds can help out.
I love this conversation that we're having, and I especially like that you addressed earlier the need to educate our younger generation. Because I think other than addressing the supply of these drugs, it's also very important, of course, to address this demand that we're seeing inside the country. Is there also more we could be doing in that aspect other than just addressing young people?
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to educating the young one. Parents need to be aware of what's happening in their backyard. They need to know what these kids know. Social media is not our friend when it comes to educating our kids about the different types of drugs out there. The internet drugs, that is crucial. So it starts at the basic level of parents being aware. With the legalization of marijuana, we basically have said, hey, this is like drinking a Coors Light when the THC levels are so high. Parents need to educate themselves of what the dangers of this THC that's out there. So first, get the kids involved or get the parents involved. Communicate with your kids. Know what your kid's doing. Schools need to also, step up and know what's happening in their hallways, in the bathrooms. And then we as a community, we need to elect people in office that are going to be tough on drugs, be tough on these drug traffickers, and stand as a community and saying no more, not in our backyard.
Absolutely. I think a multifaceted approach is always so important in these types of situations. Stacey Zinn, former DA special agent. Great having you on today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, is there really hope for reversing autism? A pediatrician highlights the promising results of a recent study that applied a broad detox approach to 2 twin children with autism. Stay tuned.
I'm Ilka. I live with my daughter and with my grandchildren. There's a sense of comfort that comes with eating a good meal. We try to make the most, of what we have. We have rent to pay, and then there are lights and there are gas. And while my daughter and I both work, it still just doesn't seem like there's enough to go around sometimes.
Every day, millions of our neighbors face hunger, including 1 in 5 children, and food costs keep rising. Please call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support can fill plates with nutritious food for families across the country and in your community, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks and volunteers.
If you were over and playing with us, you were part of our family and you were going to eat. A real cook can take nothing and make something.
No one should ever have to wonder if they will have enough to eat, and our neighbors are working hard to feed their families every day. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger from coast to coast and in your own community. Use your credit card and you'll get this exclusive canvas grocery bag as a thank you for joining hands with people across America to help end hunger.
Some of the lessons that I hope that my family will take, it is important to treat people the way that you want to be treated. I have carried on the tradition of loving people through food.
Please call right now or go online to make a monthly gift at helpfeedingamerica.org. Your support helps our neighbors bring food home to their families.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day. Becoming a better version of myself. To be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just growing. He's becoming his own person. Man, at first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. He really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.
Welcome back to NTD. I'm joined in studio by NTD health correspondent and host of Epic TV's Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs zooms in on important aspects of health that influence our lives. Brendan, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
What do you have for us?
Today, I want to talk about autism a little bit. This is something, it's according to statistics, it's clearly growing in society. We're seeing it a lot more often. There is some debate about why that might be the case. Whether it's just being detected more often, or if we're actually seeing this come about more frequently for some reason. And then there's the debate around whether it's largely genetic or whether it's environmental. And I spoke to a pediatrician in Los Angeles, Dr. Joel Warsh, and he's put himself quite centrally in this debate. And he's identified, well, through research, speaks about a number of factors on the environmental side that could very well be contributing to autism. And here he's outlining some of those factors.
So
one of the things that I mean, we know there's some debate around medications. This is a controversial issue. And one thing that has come up repeatedly is looking at antibiotics, not just in terms of autism, but in terms of different conditions like Alzheimer's dementia, for one. We know that the gut is very closely connected to the brain. I think maybe not so much recognized in Western medicine, but definitely if we look at traditional Chinese medicine, they see this link very clearly. And it makes sense because so much of the nervous system is located in the gut. The immune system is in the gut. And I've been told by a researcher who was a brain surgeon, Dr. Russell Blaylock, that any inflammation in the body ends up causing inflammation in the brain. So what happens in the gut, it's not disconnected from what's going on in the brain.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, whenever I hear about autism, I always wonder, you know, what is autism? I've heard people say that everybody exists somewhere on the autism spectrum, and that kind of confuses me. So does that mean that I have autism?
That's a good question. Sometimes I ask myself that question. I have no doubt I'm somewhere on the spectrum. And I think there's certain traits that may be advantageous. I think, like, I'm very much into ordering things, you know, and like as a child, you're given blocks, put the red blocks together, put the green blocks together. And I've carried that trait with me throughout life. I'm very big on classifying things and categorizing things, and I get a kick out of it. And I think it comes in handy, you know, in terms of the work that we're doing, being able to put things into categories and know what themes are connecting things. So I think that's the general understanding. We're all somewhere on the spectrum. We all, you know, have arguably some level of functional, you know, problems functioning in society. Well, there's ways that we're challenged in different respects. Some people obviously have it much more severely. Some people, some of these children, they have autism to the degree that they can't speak. They can't perform daily tasks of living. Then you have people on the opposite end of the spectrum, highly accomplished people in society with autism. And that's something else also that Dr. Warsh talks about, maybe the need to really classify, to really delineate this distinction between these two types. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you for shedding some light on that. There's so much nuance here. It's not what meets the eye for people who may not know about this exactly. What stood out to you in your interview with Dr. Warsh about the potential for reversing autism?
Really fascinating and really hopeful, because there are so many families struggling with this, not to mention how children are impacted with everything from the comorbidities like epilepsy, sleep problems, depression, self-injury. So if there is some hope for maybe not completely reversing the condition, reducing the symptoms, this is a significant benefit. And Dr. Warsh pointed to a particular study, a study that was done with twins. The results came out, I think, around 2023. And the advantage is these were twins, so you have two people with the same genetics, basically, identical twins. And if you're seeing the results in both, then it's quite compelling evidence. And they really set about doing a very extensive detox program with these kids, really looking at their food. I mean, diet is so crucial. So many of the doctors I'm speaking to are talking about that, and limiting the amount of foods that are, emphasizing organic food, limiting food that has pesticides, herbicides, exposure to it, cleaning products in the home, limiting the kind of toxicity factor that's there in the home, the things that they're using on their bodies. So a wide spectrum of detoxification was implemented in this case.
Yeah, it's so interesting, especially because they're using twins in this study. I mean, it's a pretty powerful constant, I would imagine. I'm not a scientist, but I know Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health Secretary of the United States, has been making autism a big part of his priority, resolving this issue. Did you have a chance to talk with Dr. Warsh about that, and what are you seeing there?
Dr. Warsh has been very active in this area for some time, and he's made it very clear in his social media that he's quite pleased to see the direction that things are going under what RFK Jr. is doing. And I mean, the things like these artificial dyes, flavorings that we see turning up in the American versions of cereals, that they're just not there in the same version in other countries. And again, it's this toxicity potential, brain inflammation being made even increasingly identified as a risk factor for autism. Also with Alzheimer's, curiously, and we see in some ways a reflection of the symptoms in autism to some degree with Alzheimer's. So,
Brendan, I'm sorry to cut you off. That is all the time we have for you for this topic today. It's so interesting, and especially that RFK Jr. has made it such a priority, and we haven't heard it become such a priority in other administrations and at other times. Thank you so much.
Great to be on.
To see that full Vital Signs interview with Dr. Warsh, just go to your browser and enter ept.ms/autism-study. Coming up, what if retirement isn't the goal anymore? More people are trading the retirement dream for work-life balance. We speak with a financial planner for the ins and outs and tips on planning for your dream life ahead. Stay tuned. Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids, and just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids, just in case I didn't make it. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org with your donation to help save lives. You can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that help save my life.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
Heart disease is the #1 killer in the U.S. That's why it's so important that you call or go online right now with your generous gift. I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. We all need your help. And your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now with your gift of any amount.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Welcome back. With all the advances in healthcare and nutrition, Americans' life expectancy is projected to rise to nearly 86 years old in the next 30 or so years. So your retirement could last 25 to 40 years, all of which takes more planning and savings to avoid outliving assets. It also calls on us to ensure we're really living through those years. To discuss the latest trends and advice on how to achieve your best scenario, NTD's Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunce spoke with Lawrence Sprung, founder of Midland Financial and the author of Financial Planning Made Personal.
So the traditional notion of retirement as this full stop is kind of fading. Why is that, and what is the trend exactly that you're seeing?
So I think it's really a function of this whole idea around retirement was created many, many years ago when people were essentially working for 20 years, retiring, and then having a very short life afterwards because life expectancies were much shorter. Now we're living much longer, and people are finding that when they do or if they retire, that they're missing meaningful, joyful events in their life, and they want to do something more meaningful with that time. So it's no longer this hard stop that we've seen in years past.
So being that the lifestyle is changing, people are living longer, how can people plan for those later years if they aren't the type of person who just wants to play golf and read and they want to continue to work?
I think that's the biggest challenge, and being that this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, I think it's really important to hit on that. A lot of advisors talk about the financial aspects of retirement, the numbers, etc. It's not just about the numbers, it's about what are they going to be able to do meaningfully with this time. So just like they would plan financially for that time, they have to start planning mentally and socially for that. So you have to get out of your shell in terms of going to work every day, just hanging out with the people at work, and try to build relationships outside of that environment and find those things that you find joy in, whether that's charitable endeavors, volunteering, maybe it's even a side hustle, right, that you thought about doing a long time ago but couldn't because of family circumstances, and now you have the time and the money to potentially go in that direction.
So it sounds like this work-life balance that people feel it so much more of a need for or draw towards even now before they retire is a gentle slope into a kind of work-life balance while you stay retired. What's behind that trend toward work-life balance?
I think COVID really, sprung people into this idea that, reevaluating things and understanding things a little bit more proactively. And they're understanding that it's not just about the work environment, it's about the life. And creating this work-life harmony is really important to them. And quite frankly, it's good for employers, right? In terms of if you are with an employer for a long period of time, instead of just pumping the brakes, stopping, if you can glide into that retirement with the employer's permission, you could then train the next generation and slowly, work on your outside activities, continue your employment, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Let's talk a little bit about readiness. I know you work with families on planning for the future. What should folks be thinking about both materially with their money and their assets, as well as mentally for sort of later stages of life?
So I think we start with the assets a lot of times, and it's really not about the assets. The assets are really a tool to generate whatever their goals are. So we really have to spend a lot of time on figuring out what their why is, what's really important to them, what are they looking to accomplish, are they really looking to retire, and how is that money going to serve them in the best way possible. So, and then designing the plan that's going to allow them to live that life. So I think from the financial standpoint, that's how you view it. And then mentally, you have to, just like you're starting to prepare financially 10, 15 years before you're planning for those financial aspects, you also have to plan for these mental aspects too. You know, am I somebody who's going to retire? I know me personally, I will probably work my entire life, not because I have to, because I enjoy it. I get a lot of joy out of going into work every day. I may not go at the same speed that I'm going at today, but with that being said, I know what I want and I know what my why is. So if people find that out and then start preparing for that mentally, it's going to be super helpful to create an environment that's really healthy for them financially and mentally as well.
Yeah, this all makes the huge decisions very personal. Everybody's got to make this kind of plan going forward, but it's not a universal thing. It's very, very individual. How can families really start to know what their why is in 10 or 15 years?
Yeah. So I think one of the things is you go online, there's a lot of general rules of thumb and things that you look at. And, you know, you would think that these things work universally for everybody. And there are people out there that come into us and say, well, how much money should I have for retirement? Well, we don't know what your spending habits are, right? We don't know how much you need to cover your expenses. So I think you really have to have an understanding of what your personal situation is. And if you're working with an advisor, they have to understand that too. And to your point, you may be planning very far out, right? 10, 15, 20 years. So the whole idea is to have a plan in place based upon today and then be flexible.
Coming up, how are American consumers reacting to the prevailing economic uncertainty, and how should they react? We speak with a senior research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research after the break.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Supermodel Cindy Crawford doesn't just walk the red carpet, she rocks it. At 58, she steals the show and wows the press. Hollywood Life exclaims, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. While Page 6 raves, she's still as gorgeous as ever. What is Cindy's secret? It's meaningful beauty. And now with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever. Watch as the appearance of lines and wrinkles are diminished in just weeks. It's no wonder everyone's talking about meaningful beauty.
My makeup artist said, your skin has been looking great lately. What products are you using? And I said, I'm using Meaningful Beauty. And she said, really? I've tried Meaningful Beauty before. I love those products. And then the other lady down in the trailer said, I use Meaningful Beauty. I love it.
Our new and improved formulas deliver age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin where wrinkles begin. And this brand new offer is Cindy's most exciting ever. Because when you order, you'll get Cindy's exclusive Super Brightening Duo, a $120 value absolutely free. First, you'll get 60 of our Revive and Brighten eye masks, the celebrity secret that visibly smooths, awakens, and restores the area around your eyes. Next, discover the power of our Vitamin C Biphase Brightening Oil for an immediate boost of glamour and glow.
I'm not ashamed to say I am 53 years old. Thank you, Cindy.
The total effect of this free gift package? A red carpet ready complexion. Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
So make the call or go online now and put yourself on the path to the most beautiful skin of your life. Trust me, it's worth it.
This special offer is not available anywhere else, so don't delay. Scan the code, go to meaningfulbeauty.com, or call the number on your screen now.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Our top stories. A Mexican Navy ship crashed into the landmark Brooklyn Bridge in New York on Saturday night. 2 sailors died. The collision now under investigation. Brazil's president keeps strengthening ties with the Chinese Communist Party. Arian Pazdar explores how this could affect the U.S. and countries across the globe. How are American consumers reacting to the prevailing economic uncertainty, and how should they react? We speak with a senior research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. Anybody tried using AI as a therapist? AI support tools have been popping up, claiming it can provide 24/7 emotional support. A board-certified psychiatrist breaks down the potential risks and rewards. There are now more AI chatbots, and some work as tools to help children with their homework. But a recent report says some of those chatbots offer children other information, such as detailed instructions on how to make date rape drugs. Should parents be worried about their children using AI chatbots? An expert breaks it down.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
A Mexican Navy ship sailing on a global goodwill tour struck the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City on Saturday, snapping its 3 masts, killing 2 crew members, and leaving some sailors dangling from harnesses high in the air. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
2 dead and 19 injured last night as a Mexican Navy training vessel ran into the Brooklyn Bridge. Reports say the boat lost power as it sailed in reverse into the bridge. Only people on the boat were injured. All commuters crossing the bridge were unharmed. As you can see behind me is where the boat ran into the bridge and dragged underneath towards people on the other side, looking a little worried as the boat might run into them.
Holy crap.
Eyewitnesses were reporting seeing people dangling from the safety harnesses.
We were just getting dinner. We went to Time Out Market. We were coming out. We do this quite a bit. We just sit out here and watch the sunrise, sunset.
And the boat kind of just like was going past the bridge, and you just saw the top of it snap off, and it just like kept on snapping. And there was, I think there was a person dangling from the top.
The boat named Katemag was carrying 277 passengers in total. Some early reports say that the vessel may have lost power as witnesses noticed the boat moving in reverse as it collided into the bridge.
The coordination was extremely important, and it was executed to the best of our ability to minimize any loss of life. Our hearts go out to the family members, and many family members are going to be traveling here from Mexico. We want to make sure we collaborate with the ambassador and his team to give them the proper information at the hospital.
Brooklyn Bridge has since been reopened, officials said after it was briefly closed, as emergency officials responded to the incident pretty quickly. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Next, ever since the Russia-Ukraine war began, world leaders have called for peace, each side coming together for direct peace negotiations on Friday. Next, we check in live with NTD's David Lamb for more. David, good to see you this Sunday. What can you tell us about the peace talks?
Chris, glad to be here. So this is the first direct peace talk between Russia and Ukraine ever since the 2022 invasion. This took place in Istanbul, Turkey, and it lasted less than 2 hours. But the biggest highlight is that both sides have agreed to a prisoner swap of 1,000 prisoners each. And this is the largest ever since the war started. Now, as far as the fighting, both sides seem to be distant on reaching, an end to the fighting because Ukraine wants to have a temporary ceasefire, saying that while the guns are not silenced, they're not able to negotiate peace, whereas the Kremlin, they do not want a truce. And the Ukrainian and Russian president did not attend this meeting. They sent their delegates instead. So Volodymyr Zelensky, he did make a statement from Albania. Let's roll the clip.
If the Russian representatives in Istanbul today cannot even agree to that, to ceasefire, to this clearly necessary first step, then it will be 100% clear that Putin continues to undermine diplomacy.
Now, a Russian official said that he was satisfied with this outcome and ready to continue contacts. Chris?
Now, according to U.S. officials, Russia-Ukraine peace is contingent upon Trump and Putin meeting. What is next here?
Yeah, Chris, so both sides are under pressure from Trump to end the fighting, end this war. So President Donald Trump, after this meeting, he said that he'll make a phone call with President Putin on Monday, and followed by a call or meeting with Zelensky and NATO allies as well. And this is in an effort to broker a ceasefire in the Ukraine war. So let's roll a clip of Trump.
We have to meet. He and I will meet. I think we'll solve it, or maybe not, but at least we'll know. And if we don't solve it, it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, so this phone call is to end the ceasefire, or to end the war. It's highly anticipated to just end all the fighting and bloodshed, long awaited since 2022. And this would be huge if things go through. So during the meeting, though, both sides did seem to agree to come up with more detailed proposals coming in regards to the ceasefire to continue, going forward. So, Chris, back to you.
All right, David, thank you so much for that report. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this. And now to the Russia-Ukraine war, or staying with the Russia-Ukraine war. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance shook hands with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky today in Rome, as they were attending Pope Leo XIV's inaugural Mass in the Vatican. A spokesperson for the vice president said he was meeting Zelensky in the U.S. ambassador's residence. This comes ahead of a call between Trump and Vladimir Putin next week. Trump announced yesterday he would speak with the presidents of Russia and Ukraine on Monday.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday said he would speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday about stopping the war in Ukraine, and that he would talk afterward with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The conversations would come just days after a Friday meeting in Turkey between officials from both countries. A senior Ukrainian official familiar with Friday's talks said Russian negotiators demanded Ukraine pull its troops out of all Ukrainian regions claimed by Moscow before they would agree to a ceasefire. It was the first time the two sides had held face-to-face discussions since March of 2022, weeks after Russia's full-scale invasion of its smaller neighbor. Trump, in a social media post, said he would speak to Putin at 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday, writing, quote, "The subjects of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing, on average, more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade." He added that he would speak afterward with Zelensky and various members of NATO. Trump had offered to travel to Turkey for Friday's talks while in the Gulf last week if Putin would also attend, but Putin sent a team of negotiators instead. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke by telephone with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Saturday and said he welcomed the, quote, positive role of the U.S. in helping to secure a resumption of talks between Russia and Ukraine. Rubio was quoted as telling the CBS News program Face the Nation that Lavrov said the Russians were, quote, working on a series of ideas and requirements that they would have in order to move forward with a ceasefire and further negotiations. In the interview, to be broadcast Sunday, Rubio said of the Russians, quote, "I think your question is, are they tapping us along? Well, that's what we're trying to find out."
And now for your news roundup of the week. It was all about foreign policy the past 7 days. From a key trade deal to a major Middle East trip. On Monday, the United States and China agreed to significantly reduce tariffs on each other's goods for a temporary 90-day period, a move that has eased tensions in the ongoing trade war and lifted global markets. The United States and China agreed to drop tariffs by a massive 115 percentage points at the conclusion of the 2 days in talks in Switzerland. Currently, U.S. tariffs on China stand at 30%, and China's tariffs on the U.S. are just 10%. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. does not want to completely decouple from China.
We do not want a generalized decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. What we want is the U.S. is going to decouple in strategic industries, which we saw during COVID.
Friday, President Trump completed his first major foreign trip of his second term with a tour to the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. The first resulted in major investment deals and the forging of a new diplomatic bond with Syria. During the first stop of his trip in Saudi Arabia, President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince signed a series of economic agreements. The kingdom agreed to invest $600 billion in a number of deals with the U.S. Also, while in Saudi Arabia, the president said he'd lift all sanctions against Syria, saying it's time for the country to move forward with a chance at greatness. During President Trump's second stop, a series of agreements were also made with Qatar. The agreements include an agreement to buy more Boeing aircraft, also letters of intent to buy U.S. drone aircraft, and joint cooperation between Qatar and the U.S. During the president's final stop in the United Arab Emirates, a deal was struck for the Gulf country to build the largest artificial intelligence campus outside the United States. The project will grant the UAE expanded access to advanced AI chips. Coming up, Brazil's president keeps strengthening ties with the Chinese Communist Party. Arian Pazdar explores how this could affect the U.S. and countries across the globe in just a moment here on NTD News.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids. I was finally following my dreams. Just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that helped save my life. When you give $19 a month with your credit card, we'll send you this special t-shirt to show you're a part of our community of monthly donors.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. Your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor.
First time that I went to see him, a lot of stuff came into my mind because I wasn't prepared at all. I know the first 3 months of his life were really important, and I wanted to be there all the time for him. First time he was like, "Daddy, Daddy." That was one of his first words. He grew up so quick. He just surprised me every day. He's really smart. I really think he can be an astronaut, president. But I'm gonna support him for wherever he wants to be. Whether he wanna be a photographer, musician, whatever. As a father, I guess you don't focus on you. I put himself first. That's what a dad does.
Welcome back to NTD. Taiwan is on alert for more Chinese military drills next week as President Lai Ching-te reaches his one-year anniversary in office. In an interview on Saturday, Taiwan's president had a question for Beijing. Is China's approach toward Taiwan really working in its favor? Lai thinks China's main goal is to step up on the world stage and start rewriting the rules with intentions to reshape the global world order. And that's why Beijing's been ramping up pressure on Taiwan. Taking over the island is a key part of China's overall game plan. Lai pushed back against Beijing's claims over the self-ruled island, saying it's up to the Taiwanese people to decide their future, not China. An organization speaking on behalf of Taiwan states that since Lai took office, threats from China have basically become routine. They warned that Taiwan isn't ruling out the possibility of seeing more Chinese military drills, calling them part of China's propaganda procedure. Over the past year, China has staged several rounds of military exercises around Taiwan, signs many believe that more are on the way. Notably, these drills ramped up in 2022 after then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Following her trip, China launched live fire and air and naval exercises, showcasing its military strength. Next, President Trump's upcoming call with Vladimir Putin could shake up relations between Russia and China. In recent years, especially since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, China has been strengthening its ties with Moscow. Now those ties could be tested. U.S.-Russia talks aimed at ending the war may impact China's role in the equation. In February, Chinese leader Xi Jinping spoke with Vladimir Putin, reaffirming their close ties on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Since 2022, China has backed Russia economically, calling their relationship a no-limits partnership. By 2024, trade surged nearly 70%, with China purchasing Russian oil, helping fund Moscow's war efforts. Now, with Trump set to speak to Putin on Monday, analysts suggest this may be a strategic move by Trump to split Russia from China, possibly weakening Beijing's leverage. But others say the China-Russia partnership is too deep to break, especially with Russia still relying heavily on Chinese support. Trump's call also ties into his broader push to counter China's economic influence, particularly in global resources. If he secures Russian cooperation, it could strengthen his hand in trade talks with China during the 90-day tariff truce. Here's a recap of the most important news about U.S.-China relations from the past week.
Chief of Space Operations at the U.S. Space Force, General B. Chance Saltzman, warned that China and Russia pose serious threats to U.S. space defenses. This comes as China and Russia cooperate on building an international lunar research station.
The PRC has developed what we've kind of, tongue-in-cheek called a kill web. And it's nothing more than a series of hundreds of satellites that are a sensor network that provide real-time updates targeting quality information of our force.
Starting Wednesday, May 14th, the U.S. will lower its tariff on Chinese imports from 145% to 30%. China, in turn, will reduce its duties on American goods from 125% to 10%. The pause will last for 90 days. President Trump called it a victory, not only for the numbers, but also for what he called leverage. China's state-owned media outlets painted it as a sign that the U.S. is backing down. It justified the claim by saying Beijing didn't budge while hiking its tariffs.
The best part of the deal was that we opened up China. China agreed to open itself up to American business to go in. China will also suspend and remove all of its non-monetary barriers. They've agreed to do that.
President Trump said tariffs could go substantially higher if no long-term deal is reached after the 90-day window. Stanford students are speaking out against threats posed by Communist China. After nearly 1 year investigation, the school's own newspaper, the Stanford Review, has drawn a conclusion. The Chinese Communist Party is orchestrating what it described as a widespread intelligence gathering network at Stanford. The report also found the CCP is collecting a broad range of information, including details on everything from the school's research projects to lab workflows, to software and methodology.
Given that Stanford has a lot of foreign students from China, they probably need to vet those students properly before actually, I would say, recruiting those students to any sensitive projects or ongoing research that, could be weaponized or, extorted back to China.
Brazilian President Lula da Silva keeps strengthening ties with the Chinese Communist Party. The left-leaning president visited China this week, meeting with regime leader Xi Jinping. Let's now bring in NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar, who's in Brazil. Arian, tell us more about this visit and how it could impact the U.S.
Hey Chris, good to see you. Thanks for having me. So yeah, it can impact the US, but it also impacts the rest of the globe, I think. That is simply because China and Brazil both are huge economies, right? China produces a lot of industrial goods, while Brazil has huge natural resources. So everything they do basically affects the global economy. But the other reason for why it especially affects the US is because the BRICS coalition keeps trying to replace the US dollar as the global reserve currency. The BRICS coalition, as we know, is made up of huge economies like China, Russia, Brazil, and many others these days. And just during this week's visit, Brazil's President Lula da Silva again talked about replacing the US dollar. Let's take a look.
What we really want is to find a way to find either a currency or a basket of currencies that can allow us to do business without depending on a single currency. We want to negotiate with the United States, but if there is no agreement, we will have to put reciprocity into practice.
And Chris, the country where the global reserve currency comes from obviously holds a certain power. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have this power be with the United States rather than China, Russia, or any other of these countries, to be honest. And that's exactly why Brazil strengthening ties with China and still talking about replacing the US dollar is such a major issue for the US, but also for the entire globe, quite frankly. Chris?
Yeah, and you raised such an important point because the U.S. State Department says that the Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide in its own country. So, Arian, I want to look at this. What about Brazil itself? Do they think that they can at least profit from a partnership with China?
No, Chris, I think, to be honest, not even Brazil is going to profit too much. And that's because China often does something many people call modern colonization. Right? So they go to developing countries like Brazil and they're like, hey, we can help you build infrastructure like shipping ports at strategic locations usually. But what happens then is that either the interest rates are super high or the ports are simply not profitable. What does China do? They step in. They're like, hey, you can't pay us back. We're now going to take over this port, which happens to be at a strategic location. And they basically colonize that piece of land. Just a few years ago, China invested almost $1 billion in a shipping port less than 1 hour away from where I am right now here in Brazil. They do this all over Latin America and Africa too. In Africa, it's actually way worse. But let's stay with Latin America for today because it's closer to the US. In Peru, China is building a shipping port which has the capability to hold military vessels. Now, I don't think that the US, or anybody in the Western Hemisphere for that matter, wants Chinese military vessels at their doorstep. So these are a few of the reasons for why Brazil's ties with China and in general China's Latin America ties are bad for the US and for the world. But the good news is, Chris, that the US is countering that. Actually, when President Trump came into office, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, one of the first things he did as Secretary of State was he toured Latin American countries, multiple countries. So the Trump administration is countering this Chinese influence here in the Western Hemisphere. Chris?
That's right. And we know that Panama has actually withdrawn from China's Belt and Road Initiative, the sort of loan shark type program you were referencing earlier. Ariane, thank you so much for that report. Coming up, we look at how Americans are responding to the economic uncertainty that comes with a significant change in the White House, plus tips to help you manage your money wisely at this time. And anybody trying using AI as a therapist? AI support tools have been popping up claiming that it can provide round-the-clock emotional support. A board-certified psychiatrist explains the pros and cons. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
I'm Ilka. I live with my daughter and with my grandchildren. There's a sense of comfort that comes with eating a good meal. We try to make the most, of what we have. We have rent to pay, and then there are lights and there are gas. And while my daughter and I both work, it still just doesn't seem like there's enough to go around sometimes.
Every day, millions of our neighbors face hunger, including 1 in 5 children, and food costs keep rising. Please call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support can fill plates with nutritious food for families across the country and in your community, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks and volunteers.
If you were over and playing with us, you were part of our family and you were going to eat. A real cook can take nothing and make something.
No one should ever have to wonder if they will have enough to eat, and our neighbors are working hard to feed their families every day. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger from coast to coast and in your own community. Use your credit card and you'll get this exclusive canvas grocery bag as a thank you for joining hands with people across America to help end hunger.
Some of the lessons that I hope that my family will take, it is important to treat people the way that you want to be treated. I have carried on the tradition of loving people through food.
Please call right now or go online to make a monthly gift at helpfeedingamerica.org. Your support helps our neighbors bring food home to their families.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride with being part of these multi-generational businesses. But there's also a significant amount of pressure. My senior year of high school, my dad made the decision that this world no longer needed him in it. I don't know if he was overwhelmed by the bills and checks that weren't going to be coming in because of the strawberries dying off, but it breaks my heart that my dad made a permanent decision for a temporary issue. Don't feel like you have to go through it alone.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
In the mornings, that's my time. Watching the sun come up, I can have a cup of coffee and exercise if I want to. It helps me start the day with a sense of gratitude.
Yay!
Every day is a new opportunity. Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love, your mind.
Welcome back. Whether you like what President Trump is doing with the economy or not, the president is changing things, and change means uncertainty. From worldwide tariff hikes to domestic oil production to trillions of dollars of investment attracted, the financial landscape is indeed changing. How are Americans responding, and how can we adapt wisely? Here for answers is Dave Herbert, Senior Research Fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. Dave, welcome. What are some telltale signs of America's response to the prevailing economic uncertainty right now?
Thanks for having me on. So when we look at reports on consumer spending and consumer sentiment, what we're seeing is that both are down right now. And this makes sense. We are seeing sort of an economic slowdown at the moment, especially in the manufacturing sector, which is somewhat ironic. But we're also seeing a persistent inflation that does not seem to be coming down fast enough. We're still well above the 2% mark that the Fed has charted as their target. We're also getting President Trump saying that he wants Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. but that would just push inflation up even higher. And so there's just tremendous uncertainty right now, and people are gravitating toward certainty as much as they can. This comes in the form of subscriptions. This is coming in the form of reduced, restaurant patronage, reduced vacation times, or what we're seeing is vacation offerings of all-inclusive packages where you get pretty much everything for one big fee. Now, it's oftentimes more expensive to go that way, but that transforms the uncertainty of what you're going to spend on your vacation into a certain amount of money up front. And so we are seeing changes in how people are spending their money.
So is that almost counterproductive, though? I mean, people signing up for more expensive packages, but just to avoid uncertainty?
So it is a little bit counterproductive. It does end up costing more money typically than doing things in a sort of piecemeal fashion. But what we see are people making that trade-off. They would prefer to know how many dollars they're going to spend this month to spending a variable amount every month, even if that does end up costing them a little bit of money. Now, what we're seeing and what I'm particularly worried about are the rise of subscriptions and the number of subscriptions that the average household has at any given moment. These subscriptions are not expensive in their individual, markets. $9 a month, $10 a month, maybe $20 a month. But if you've got 10, 12, 15 of those subscriptions, all of a sudden it's kind of a death by a thousand paper cuts scenario where it can be incredibly difficult to keep track of what subscriptions you have, how much money they're costing you every month, and more importantly, how to actually go about canceling them.
Yeah, and some of these subscriptions require a little bit of work sometimes. It depends on, I know some gyms, for example, require you to come in person or send a letter. So how do you think people can manage subscriptions better?
So this is one of those scenarios where due diligence is absolutely necessary. We need to actually sit down, not get bamboozled by perhaps the 3-month free trial that everyone seems to be offering these days, and really sit down and say, do I actually need this subscription, or can I make do with existing subscriptions? Right? And we also need to understand the fine print that these companies can and often do raise prices in the middle of contracts or at the end of your contract without really a whole lot of notice other than just a simple email. So we really need to pay attention to our banking accounts. Make sure you're checking in at least once a month to see where your money's actually going, and keep track and make sure that you have more money coming in every month than going out.
Dave, I want to look at this. Do you think people are kind of exaggerating or just more concerned about the uncertainty than perhaps they should? Because economists, of course, are warning there could be a recession. But there's also the fact that oil prices are falling. Inflation is coming down, though, like you mentioned, it's not where we want it to be. Don't these things hedge against the threat of recession?
So yes and no. You can see falling oil prices as a hedge to a recession, but you can also see falling oil prices as sort of the precursor to a recession. So look, when people stop going on vacations or when trucking companies stop shipping as much product, the demand for oil and oil products is going to fall, which is going to lead to a fall in oil prices. So it's hard to reason from this sort of price change just in and of itself and figure out where the future is going. We can, however, use more information to try to see exactly what's happening. And to your point about the uncertainty, I think you hit the nail on the head here. There is a tremendous amount of uncertainty in this world, both in terms of the tariff rates and who is going to have tariffs and what the rates are going to be and what the goals of these tariffs are going to be. Depending on which person in Trump's inner circle you talk to, you're going to get a completely different perspective on what President Trump is trying to accomplish with these tariffs. Now, that's going to create tremendous uncertainty in and of itself. But then when you have tariffs going up to 145% in the case of China, and then down to 30% practically overnight, that's going to create tremendous uncertainty. Then when you have things going on like we're going to raise all this revenue from tariffs, but then the actual revenue that comes in is far less, that will create uncertainty. When we have a president saying that manufacturing jobs are coming to America and that they're going to be great again, but every single report out of the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the Bureau of Economic Analysis says the exact opposite, that's going to create uncertainty. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty across a ton of different dimensions in our economy right now. And I think consumers are just grasping at whatever certainty they can find.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. You mentioned tariffs. It seems like every time the Trump administration announces progress on some kind of tariff deal, like we saw with China this past week, the stock market gets some kind of a boost. Now, dozens of these deals are already in the works right now. How much more juice do you think you'd be squeezed out of the economy, and do you think that's something we can look forward to?
So look, the American economy is incredibly resilient to policy, even policies as disastrous and destructive as tariffs. And the reason for that is because the American people are so incredibly resilient and we're so incredibly entrepreneurial. It's what has made America great in the past, and if it's unleashed, will make America great again in the future. So I'm not at all surprised at the stock market's rally. I'm not at all surprised that the stock market is continuing to climb, especially as tariffs are rescinded for 90 days at a time, as it seems. But if we really want to actually grow the economy, if we really want to help the American people, what we need to be doing is looking at tearing down barriers to trade, not erecting new ones. Now, the second half of President Trump's policy agenda, deregulation, especially for manufacturing for export, lowering taxes for the American people and for manufacturing, and then education reform. These are three tools that are wonderful, and we have a proven track record of them working extraordinarily well. For his next 100 days, that's where President Trump should be focused.
All right, Dave Herbert, Senior Research Fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, British lawmakers debated a bill on Friday that would legalize assisted suicide for the terminally ill. Those in support say it would offer an easy way out of potentially painful death, while opponents are concerned it could push people to end their lives instead of seeking other healthcare options. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
Heated debates in Parliament over a bill seeking to legalise assisted suicide. Now, this bill would give terminally ill people who are expected to have less than 6 months left to live the option to end their lives with the help of doctors. Currently, assisting someone to commit suicide is illegal in the UK. The politician fronting the bill, Kim Leadbeater, advocates for this to change.
Too many have seen their terminally ill loved ones take their own lives out of desperation, or make the traumatic, lonely and costly trip to Switzerland, and then face a police investigation while dealing with their grief and loss.
The bill would require assisted suicide to be approved by 2 doctors, as well as a panel featuring a social worker, a senior legal figure and a psychiatrist. But politician Rachel Maskell cited recent concerns raised by the Royal College of General Practitioners.
Clinicians and professional bodies do not understand why psychiatrists and social workers are placed in a quasi-judicial role rather than to use their clinical and social expertise.
She said she feared the bill would lead a patient down the route to assisted suicide rather than offering other healthcare solutions. Meanwhile, campaigners on both sides made their views heard. Esther Ranson has been a prominent campaigner for assisted suicide. She was diagnosed as terminally ill with stage 4 cancer in 2023. Her daughter Rebecca Wilcox spoke outside Parliament.
We should be able to have a pain-free, caring, compassionate death. I only wish I could get that from my mother, and I know that the peace of mind that would come with that would be huge.
Other campaigners raised concerns. Actress and international disability rights activist Liz Carr says there is a lot of spin and myths when it comes to the debate. Last year, she made a documentary, Better Off Dead?
It was the first time across all the broadcasters that there had been a documentary looking at an opposition perspective from a non-religious side and viewpoint. That documentary came out a year ago. So we're not getting all the information.
She said many people told her they had no idea the issue was so complicated and nuanced. One key angle is what is known as subtle pressure. Senior lawyer James Bogle said that if a doctor tells you you have 6 months left to live, you are at your most vulnerable.
He says to you, well, I can offer you assisted suicide. You might say yes, because you are at your weakest and most vulnerable. Now, yes, you can withdraw later on, but the fact of the matter is, having, as it were, crossed the moral Rubicon of saying, yes, I'm willing to have assisted suicide. Many people are not going to withdraw.
Bogle said subtle pressure will not come to the attention of a panel. Parliamentarians will debate the bill again next month before voting on the bill as a whole. Some who initially supported the bill have begun to change their minds, meaning it could be a close vote either way. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
From chatbots that check in on your mood to apps promising on-demand therapy, artificial intelligence is quickly entering the mental health world. But can an algorithm really replace a therapist? And what did you know before entrusting your emotions to a machine? Dr. Mina Mirholm, a Columbia-trained, board-certified psychiatrist, shares his insights.
Let's just start with what is AI therapy and how it differs from traditional therapy.
Yeah, so this is a topic that I'm hearing about almost every day from patients, and it's no surprise because we're in a world now where 83% of Gen Zers who are surveyed can see themselves marrying an AI character. So if you can form that kind of intimate, emotional relationship, it's not surprising that many people are saying, I can really see that in therapy as well. So how AI therapy is designed to be this empathetic, reflective voice that you would sort of see in therapy. And it's supposed to mimic a lot of the humanoid relationships that we have. But of course, there are some concerns and drawbacks to that.
Now, some say AI support tools can provide this like 24/7 emotional support. Is that a good thing?
Well, yes and no, right? Imagine being able to wake up in the middle of the night and you're really anxious and you want to reach your therapist and you can't, but you can go to your chatbot and you can have some reassurance. And I've seen patients who are really struggling with severe anxiety and need constant reassurance, and having something that's available for you all the time can be very good. However, the key there is, what's the thing that we're addressing here? If it's mild and moderate symptoms, if it's something that takes some reassurance, that can be good. But we've seen several cases now where apps that are not well regulated or not, there isn't a good eye on them. If they're trying to address a crisis in the middle of the night, then that could be really dangerous. So that's a line that we really want to highlight in this conversation.
Yeah, on that point of more severe mental health conditions, is there a line here that you can see or outline for us when it's useful and when it's not useful?
Definitely. So tragically, there have been some high-level cases where we've seen drawbacks of AI therapy. For example, there's a 14-year-old boy, there's an ongoing lawsuit now, who tragically died by suicide after forming a relationship with an AI chatbot. And what's alleged in the lawsuit is that this chatbot actually sort of encouraged their suicidal behavior, and it did not properly catch the warning signs and say, hey, wait a minute, what you're saying now is dangerous, we got to be on the lookout for it. Conversely, we just had a really great randomized control trial that was published in March that showed if you have mild symptoms of anxiety or depression, there was a 51% reduction in your symptoms when you have an AI therapy chatbot that is monitored well by a therapist. So you have these two arms that are going hand in hand here.
So what are some of the leading AI therapy platforms and how do they claim to help?
So the claim, I love that you said that because there is a wide variety. Anytime you're talking about Silicon Valley and the creativity of apps, some are marketing and over-promising. There are several types, Therabot, Woebot, and the way they're trained, just like there are therapists, varies tremendously. What's going into the algorithm, whether it's CBT, whether it's evidence-based models, or it's general knowledge from the internet, has been a huge range that we've seen. And because of that, whether it's the efficacy or the privacy or how well this works, the range there is tremendous. It's really something that I've seen grow as far as it can be saying that this can cure everything and do all the things that you need versus what's really under the hood and how effective is this actually, just like we were talking off air.
Yeah, from a clinical standpoint, how do you evaluate when something's just marketed very well or if it's actually backed up with good?
That's the thing. Marketing is incredible for these apps, so we give them a lot of credit. But clinically, there's actually a tool by the American Psychological Association for Clinicians that says when we're looking at this, we're looking at the privacy, or rather the transparency of the training. How much do we know about how this algorithm is trained, first of all? What's the input? And then two, when you're looking at the claims and the data, some are claiming to say this is incredibly effective and we've had these kind of results. Well, is this published in a peer-reviewed journal? Has this been sort of adequately looked into? That's one of the things that we as clinicians look at. And three, what is the safety profile? How do you know if you have to escalate this? It's the same way if I'm working with a junior resident or a medical student. I don't need you to know everything, but I need you to know what you don't know. I need you to know when you're going to raise your hand and say, I need some help. Some of these AI bots don't have that quite yet, and that's what I worry about sometimes.
When you think about healthcare, you think about HIPAA and all the things you sign when you go to a doctor's office. But when we use the internet, we just kind of click. Right. So what are the privacy concerns, and what are people actually clicking when they agree to use these things in terms of their privacy?
This is a major point, Kerry, because sometimes when you're going on an app, there's an assumption that if I'm talking about my mental health, oh, I'm sure this is taken care of on the back end somewhere. The same way I assume this with my doctor. I assume this if I'm messaging a health system. Those same regulations are not always there with these apps, and there have been several privacy concerns that were raised in terms of how our data is used, how it's sold, how it's marketed, because some of these apps are not necessarily marketed as a health provider. They're seen as something who is a coach or someone who's providing guidance. So the regulations are very different, and that's part of the plea that we're making in the industry as well, of saying we need better regulation around how our data is used and monetized.
And back to this issue of when people are in a real crisis, that's a devastating example with the young boy who died. Is there a way that even just using this therapy could actually delay somebody from getting the real help that they need?
Unfortunately, there is. And because there is this, as you've seen, I was having a conversation with ChatGPT the other day. It is warm. It is telling me what I want to hear, not necessarily what I need to hear. So we've actually seen apps like Tessa, for example, that was pulled from the market because it was saying too much of what you'd want to hear in the context of eating disorders that may not be healthy, may not be good, may not be something that you really need to have. Because of that, my advocacy is if I can have monitoring around the chatbot, if there's AI enhanced therapy. For me as a therapist, if the patient comes in and says, I've been speaking with my TheraBot and I have this amount of data, can you fact check it? Can you tell me if this works? Can you see how I can guide this? That's a perfect world. But as long as we have this kind of putting therapy against AI, we're going to be losing out on one or the other. The human nuance is needed, but the incredible data of AI is very useful as well.
When you think about the care that you give a patient and you think about how AI can sort of multiply your capacity, do you see a world where therapists will employ AI in the way that they provide treatment? And if so, what might be some of the concerns with that type of an approach?
I definitely see that world, and my advocacy for fellow clinicians. I'm speaking at a national conference next week, and what we're talking about is if we're going to shy away from the internet, we're going to shy away from Google, right, and not use that to our advantage as a clinician, we're going to miss out on something tremendous. But if we don't know how to use it well, we don't know how to guide our patients well, then we're not going to be able to guide them safely. So in a perfect world, every therapist that's coming up now, the same way if we're saying junior high school children, are they going to cheat on exams using AI? Well, they might. Well, that's why we have to assume they have access to it, and we want to guide them through it. That is our responsibility as clinicians. If we leave them be out there on their own, they're going to be in that situation where something tragic can happen. But if we guide them through it, we can actually use what's there, which is several studies have now showed us that there is positive response from people with AI. There's engagement because it draws you in. But now we want to harness that engagement into a way that is healthy and proper.
And just looking ahead, what developments do you expect or anticipate with AI in relation to mental health, and what should we be watching out for?
What I've seen just over the past 6 months is how advanced the humanoid features are, because the biggest criticism to AI is the nuance. If I'm sitting with a patient right here like we are now, I can pick up on gestures, facial expressions, tone. These small human gestures and features that take a lot of clinical practice is part of why psychology and mental health is an art as much as it is a science. So the art is developing better now. And what I'm seeing as well is the alliance behind major institutions, research hubs. There's the New England Journal of Medicine has an AI section where it publishes research. So we're saying that we're not afraid of it as the clinical world. The world has embraced it. All of my patients are using AI in one way or another. But what I'm seeing that's hopeful, and I think that's going to give us a lot of potential progress in the future, is the merging of these two worlds, where the clinical world brings in technology and can curb it in a way that I think is most beneficial for us on the human day-to-day level.
Such a fascinating discussion, and like all the other times you've come in, something that I was a little unsure about, that's sort of a gray area. I feel like I can approach it with a much more sort of positive mindset and know that, we're not running to the end of the cliff. It's all going to be all right.
There's hope. There's hope,
Right.
man. There's always hope. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Munamura, such a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Coming up next, new CDC data shows the number of overdose deaths is the lowest in 5 years. But while fentanyl-related deaths have gone down, meth and cocaine-related deaths have risen. A former DEA special agent weighs in just a moment. Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Hurry in and shop Mathis Home today during the Monumental Savings Event for deals in every department. Get huge discounts on hundreds of sofas in all the latest styles. Come and see the latest looks in bedrooms and dining rooms at the lowest prices ever. You can get it all in stock with fast and free delivery. Even an incredible selection of patio and outdoor furniture so you can enjoy every part of your home. For the best service, selection, and value, don't miss out on the Monumental Savings Event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
You're watching NTD. New provisional data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows a significant drop in overdose deaths. The numbers are now at the lowest they've been in 5 years. For Insight, NTD's Fiona G. spoke with Stacy Zinn, a retired special agent with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency and Montana's former DEA resident agent in charge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this provisional data, right, from the CDC. It shows a 27% drop from last year in these drug overdose deaths in 2024. And within that, these deaths that specifically involve synthetic opioids like fentanyl, they also dropped by 37%. So as someone with extensive experience in drug enforcement, what do these numbers tell you?
Well, numbers tell me that we're starting to educate the community and the public about the dangers of fentanyl, of the harsh, the chemical reaction that can cause for one to overdose and die from these pills. The cliche "one pill can kill" campaign has been very successful. The other thing is that we as law enforcement, or me as a former law enforcement, have been adding pressure to the Sinaloa cartel, the CJNG, about we are coming after you. So you need to be aware and you need to stop pushing these drugs across the southwest border and into our communities.
But we also saw that cocaine-related deaths jumped by about 8,000 and the same number around for meth-related deaths. What do you think contributed to that rise?
Well, what's going to happen, the cartels are there to make money. So you're going to take away one product, they're going to shove other product into our country via our ports of entry, maybe through Canada, maybe through different regions. So it only makes sense. Remember, cartels are there to make money. They're not going to lose money unless we completely shut down the cartels. So this is to be expected.
So Stacey, are you saying that unless we shut down these cartels, it's just going to be like a constant game of whack-a-mole here?
Oh, absolutely. But we also need to continue educating our kids, the next generation, about the dangers of drugs. If we didn't have the demand here in the United States, then the cartels wouldn't be shoving a product at us.
Absolutely. So would you say that these shrinking numbers of overdose deaths is a trend that you're going to expect to continue to see in the coming years?
Yes, ma'am. Until we stop, we need to break down that demand. But we also need to, for lack of better words, hammer these cartels, because they're the ones that are also pushing these drugs into our country. But we also have nefarious groups out there in different regions that are also contributing to the success of the cartels pushing their drugs into our country.
All right, so let's talk about the DOJ charging these suspected high-ranking members of the Sinaloa cartel with narco-terrorism. Attorney General Pam Bondi, she's saying that they're going to try and get life in prison for these suspects. Tell us more about your experience. How difficult is it to catch and then indict these individuals and then make sure that they actually stay in jail if convicted?
Well, it's very hard because a lot of these cartel heads, even the first tier, the second tier, they are buffered. They are protected by their underlings. In order investigation to be successful in the United States, you really have to peel back the onion and find out who is doing what. These individuals, they have alias names. They are protected with the different technology they use to communicate with one another. It's hard to determine who's actually the puppet master, who is in control of this certain corridor and stuff like that. So law enforcement has a uphill battle of linking it to these high-level traffickers. But once they do, then you're taking off the head of the snake. Now, the other problem is trying to get them extradited into the United States. If these individuals are buffered in Mexico, then you're dealing with also the Mexican government. There's a whole layer of investigation that.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, MyPillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.